too.
Welcome to ThinkTech. On the ThinkTech series today, on a given Monday, you might expect the Ehana Kakou.
Which is the far left.
But you know what?
Directly to it.
Ehana Kakou is going to be turned around. Instead of having our host as Keli'i Akina, we're going to have Keli'i Akina as our guest. And Elise Anderson, who is related to Andrew Anderson, who's a member of our volunteer staff and actually will be spending December with us, we are delighted to report. Elise Anderson is going to be the host. So she's sitting in the host seat, and Keli'i is sitting in the guest seat. And we're going to talk about, Grassroots Institute and what it is. That's why we switched the seats this way. Okay, Elise Anderson, take over. You're the host. Break a leg.
Aloha and welcome to Ehana Kakou. I'm Elise Anderson, volunteering today for the Grassroots Institute of Hawaii, and I'm here with my guest Keli'i Akina, President and CEO of Grassroots Institute of Hawaii. Keli'i, tell me a little bit about the mission behind the Grassroots Institute.
Well, just first let me say this, Elise. Delighted that you're here on the program with us, and you're going to do a great job as we talk about what Grassroots is and what our vision is. And a wonderful question. You said at the very beginning, Ehana Kakou, let's work together. Let's work together for a better government, economy, and society. And that's pretty much what we are. We do research, but we also try to help build a better Hawaii.
So a better Hawaii consists of an economic future, a political future, a society that's dynamic and well organized and communicating with itself. Can you tell me a little bit about the components?
Traditionally people look to the government itself to build the society, to build the economy, and so forth. We believe that that role and responsibility is fundamentally of the people, that we are governed of the people, by the people, for the people. And so Grassroots Institute, as its name implies, grassroots, wants to help people rally around good ideas about the economy, good ideas about the government, good ideas about society. And we feel that here in Hawaii, most people have a real common base as to what they think is good. For example, on the economy, lower prices, more jobs, a more robust industry here in Hawaii, and I think we can come to agreement with that. The details we don't always agree on, and that's where Grassroots wants to help us to hammer it out and work together.
So what kinds of discussions do you think will lead to us finding that common ground?
Well, I think for one thing, the discussion has to be broad enough to include everyone. We can't have only a narrow group of people making decisions. We really have to tap into what the will of the people is. And then in addition to that, we have to have the robust competition of ideas. You see, when ideas are allowed to compete against one another in a place that is safe, we can come up with better solutions. Recently in our town, we went through tremendous divisiveness over the issue of fixed rail transportation, the rail. And sadly, it degenerated into either pro-rail or con-rail for many people, with very little discussion taking place safely in the middle. Questions that we could just take out and look at together, examine the budget, the spreadsheet, the costs, the processes, the overall affordability in the economy, the social impact, and all of these things.
The location of it.
Yeah, all of these things. And then what we would find out if we did that is that there are pros and there are cons, and there may be a solution other than just have it or don't have it. And see, facilitating that kind of public discourse is one of the things that Grassroots Institute does.
So who's involved with that? How do you get those conversations going?
Well, I think there are at least two components. One component is you need to have good information. And that's the first role of Grassroots Institute. We are technically, in that sense, a think tank. As a think tank, we produce research and package research that deals with the fundamental issues that we're dealing with in Hawaii. The nice thing about Grassroots is that we're able to leverage over our entire network. We're part of the State Policy Network, which is the largest network of free market think tanks.
Which involves every single state in the
Every single
union?
state has a think tank, and we're related to them, as well as some national organizations that are affiliates. Perhaps you've heard of the Cato Institute or the Heritage Foundation and so forth. And international organizations. So what happens is the people of Hawaii get to benefit because Grassroots Institute is able to access the largest network of PhDs, of lawyers, of politicians, of policymakers, of researchers all across the country. Let me give you an example. In Washington, D.C., one of the senior fellows at the Cato Institute is Randall O'Toole. He's one of our adjunct scholars here. So whenever we need to have a piece of research dealing with urban planning in which he is an expert, we can call upon him, but he knows enough about Hawaii to tailor it and multiply that over and over. Take, for example, our shipping costs here. Maybe later on we'll talk a little bit about the Jones Act and how that maritime law affects the prices of things in Hawaii. But nobody here in Hawaii has really done extensive research on how much the cost is, or on what solutions could there be that would really work in the political arena. Well, there's a think tank with 50 economists, the Mercatus Center at George Mason University in Washington, D.C., that has partnered with us and is producing for Grassroots research that quantifies the cost of the Jones Act, that looks at the social and political factors that could change if we tried to bring about change. So, in other words, we get a lot of bang for the buck. We're a small organization here, but we leverage by reaching out. So that's just one side of it, getting the information.
Well, when you get the information, do you
Yes.
have an idea of what you're going to do with it, or what kind of information you're going to find, or do you start with a complete blank slate?
Well, of course, being able to see problems of Hawaii in a national and international frame of reference lets us see what other people have done about those problems elsewhere. Whether it's a rail transit system, which is something that exists in cities across the world, we'll be able to tap into their research and see what they've discovered. And so that's part of it. But I don't want to forget to answer your question completely. The research alone, important as it is, isn't going to change society for the better. We also need to be communicating, and that's the other part of Grassroots Institute. We're an educational communication foundation. We communicate to political leaders, we communicate to legislators, we communicate to business people, we communicate to the public, suggestions as to how we can legislate better or how we can operate our institutions better. So those two things, being a think tank and being what my daughter likes to call a do tank, a think tank and a do tank, that's what Grassroots Institute is.
Thank you for that. Is there any particular political bend that you come at?
That's a great question. And the answer is, when it comes to partisan politics, which generally means Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, Green Party, White Party, Yellow Party, whatever it may be, the answer is no. We are a non-profit, non-denominational organization committed to good ideas. And as a result, the ideas are first. And what we seek is a broad coming together of people from all political spectrums around good ideas. For example, if there is a way to create a more robust economy that generates more jobs and serves small businesses, there are people of all political labels who can come around it when we take away the political partisanship. And I can tell you this, that there are politicians and government office holders who call our office from multiple parties, or more or less from two parties here in Hawaii, asking for counsel. We've had that happen recently in terms of the rollout of the the National Healthcare Insurance Program. We've had both Republicans and Democrats call us at Grassroots to equip their people and help them to understand some of the issues that we're going to face. So that's important. And I think that's important in Hawaii, because in Hawaii, people, as much as we respect and understand the importance of political parties as organizations to get people elected, I think most of us in Hawaii feel that it's time that we put aside labels and we deal with issues that are going to change the future, and we do it without partisanship. And I think every day in the news we see reasons why we have to come together.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's our point of view in terms of the political world. Now, some of our ideas may have been held by one party or another. Our ideas about the school system, or our ideas about the economy, or ideas about government. It could be that in the recent past, one party or another advocated for them. What we're working to do is bring people of both major parties together. And recently, one example is the move to help modify a shipping law called the Jones Act, which some people say increases our prices 20 to 30% here in Hawaii, because it restricts, it gives disincentives to shipping companies other than those that are preferred to have business in Hawaii. And in the past, only one party would bring any kind of opposition to that. But recently, our Jones Act research associate engineered a bill in the state legislature that was co-sponsored by 3 Democrats and 2 Republicans. That's historic for Hawaii.
Was this in the Senate or the House?
This was in the House. And we're looking forward to seeing that number multiply, double in the next legislative session. It didn't pass, but what it represents is that people are coming together around a good idea for Hawaii, regardless of the political banner. And that's exciting to us.
Yeah.
We don't have anything against political parties. We think they're like religious denominations. You can be a Baptist or a Catholic, but we do think that we've got to work together at some point and not simply politicize everything.
Yeah. Well, the imbalance in power right now in Hawaii, are very heavily blue state. There might not be much incentive for working together as far as partisan politics go. Do you see 3rd, 4th, 5th parties coming up anytime soon?
No, I actually don't. Although, well, let me modify that. There are always 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th parties. The question is, do we see any that can mount any significant mass following? And the answer is, I don't think so. What I do see happening is that the larger party, the Democratic Party, has tremendous opportunities for diversification. Whether you call it infighting, whether you call it the post-Noye scramble for power, there is diversity that is present and growing within the larger party. And that can be very healthy for the system at large, because that allows people within one large party to begin to gravitate around issues. And that's one way they can differentiate themselves.
Yeah.
We're hoping that there'll be enough politicians, whether they're Democrat or Republicans, who say, I think I want to align with the issues that the people can really get behind, because they're good for the people. And we want to show people that that's good for them in terms of their political career as well.
Yeah, hopefully they'll realign among, based on issues and not based on, who's friends with who and who happens to.
Well, that's one of the realities of the world here in Hawaii and in any big city and in the federal government as well. We often make decisions on the basis of who's friends with whom, or rather who is supporting whom financially, and that's called cronyism. We recently were on the news exposing a deal that was made by a procurement officer, a government procurement officer, who gave a large amount of money, $20 million, to an organization that really was owned by him and his wife.
Wow.
And you see, it's this kind of thing that happens over and over again. And the interesting thing is this: he didn't take very many pains to hide it. And so my question was, well, why don't you take pains to hide it? And the answer is, he had learned, well, he'd learned that this is the way it was done. So he was surprised that people looked into it and that he had gotten caught. And you see, this idea of doing things because of either party or because of friendship or because of campaign contributions is something that absolutely hurts the public good. It wastes money. It gives preference to people who have bad ideas for our government, our society. It keeps a small elite number of people in power. And this is an issue I think all people, whether they're Democrats or Republicans, want to fight against.
How do we turn the focus to the issues and force, I guess, the public to ask the hard questions and go to the right people to ask those questions?
Well, one way that we believe in strongly, and that's why we're a think tank first, is to get the right data. Find out what is really the case. The second way is to communicate that data to different people. And I'll give you an example. We have one of the lowest GE tax rates. And so it's often said that basically, less than 4.5% is all the general excise tax that you pay in Hawaii. Now, if that's all the data you have, you think, wow, lucky you live Hawaii.
Yeah.
Luckily, we're not paying 8%.
Lucky we do live Hawaii.
That's right.
Let's talk about that after the next commercial break.
I sure will.
I'm Elise Anderson, here with Ehana Kakou and Dr. Keli'i Akina of the Grassroots Institute of Hawaii. We'll be right back after this break.
Aloha, I'm Jay Fidel, founder of ThinkTech Hawaii. We are a digital media nonprofit that covers things that matter to tech, energy, diversification, globalism, and progress for our state, the state of Hawaii. We broadcast on community television and on Oceanic Cable Channel 16. We also stream our shows and interviews live on the internet as both radio and video, and of course we post them here on YouTube. We collaborate with the Hawaii Venture Capital Association to present monthly luncheon programs on subjects of interest to the business community, and we write for the Honolulu Star-Advertiser. ThinkTech works hard to raise public awareness in Hawaii. Check out our website, thinktechhawaii.com, and come to our YouTube channel, ThinkTech Hawaii. We hope you support our mission and that you like our work. I'm Jay Fidel. Mahalo.
Aloha and welcome back to Ehana Kakou. I'm Elise Anderson, a volunteer today with the Grassroots Institute of Hawaii, here with Dr. Keli'i Akina, President and CEO of the Grassroots Institute of Hawaii. We were talking about the numbers and how
That's right.
Hawaii can use its tax codes and
Absolutely, and you were
policies.
asking me how we can bring about change. I just wanted to give you an example of two elements that will bring about change. One, getting the right information out, and then two, promoting a campaign to help people get organized and act on it. The example we were using is the general excise tax, which generally looks small to many people, about 4.5% or less. And if that's all you know about the general excise tax, you feel lucky you live Hawaii. But one of the things we do in our role as a nationwide think tank, or at least access to the nation's think tanks, is gather data. And so the data really shows that when you take all 50 states together, Hawaii actually has the most harmful general excise tax. And here's why. This is how we analyze it. And not on the raw percentage, but you look at who's paying the general excise tax and how often they pay it. Now, somebody who's very, very wealthy knows how to use tax strategies so they can minimize the general excise tax that they pay, and most of the things they buy and invest in aren't really tapped by the general excise tax.
yeah, tax exempt.
But somebody at the bottom end, the poor or the lower middle class person, virtually everything he or she buys is from a retail outlet. Especially the poorer they are, the more likely they're going to buy it from a 7-Eleven or a grocery store or a corner store. And every single purchase gets hit with the general excise tax. Then when you compare that rate to their disposable income, you come up with a startling example. Hawaii is the worst state in terms of the taxes paid by the people who have the lowest income. That we have the highest regressive tax rate in terms of general excise as a percentage of their disposable income. Now, you wouldn't know that without the research.
No.
And when you look at it, then you realize, oh, that's a very, very harmful situation. And there are many examples like that. And what we try to do is take that information and then sit down with our policymakers, our public office holders, and say, do you know what's really going on here? Or do you know why these businesses are clamoring against this law? And so that's the second part of what we do, is we try to influence the policy that is here in the state. And that's educating the public, working with business people, working with legislators, and so forth.
I see. Thank you for that.
Well, it's something I know you'll be good at because you've worked as a legislative intern at least a couple of sessions, haven't you?
Yes, I've worked in some capacity in the state legislature since 2010. So I've worked on both Democrat sides and Republican sides, state house, state senate. It's been interesting.
Let me ask you a question then. Having worked both the Democrat and Republican side, is one party totally evil and one party totally good?
No.
Did you come to any conclusions?
Well, when I began working in the legislature, I had just finished reading a lot of Ayn Rand, and so I considered myself kind of a Republican libertarian at the time. And then I worked for NASA after about a year working in the state house, and of course, it was a lot more, very heavily Democrat in the federal government there. And so I became more of a Democrat. So I've fluctuated a bit. Right now I consider myself a libertarian, a social democrat, fiscal Republican, as do I think a lot of people my generation.
Well, all of those labels, quite interesting.
Yeah.
And that's where I think you find some resonance with Grassroots Institute. We've moved away from the political party labels, but to the nature of the ideas. So we really do believe at Grassroots Institute that a better economy is one that is freer from government intervention. So we believe in a free market economy, not totally free. The government needs to be there to enforce laws, contracts, and do some regulation. But on the other hand, the less they do and the more limited it is, the better off We are, because we let people compete with each other, and competition drives the economy forward rather than protecting it.
People have incentive.
That's right. So free market economics is one of the approaches Grassroots Institute takes to a better economy. In terms of a better government, we believe that government should be limited to its constitutional role and held accountable to that. And it's not really a question of big versus small. It's a question of, are they doing what's appropriate to them? And are they allowing the power to be as close to the people as possible? So we believe in the idea of competitive federalism. Now, what's that mean? That means if there's anything that the states can do and do better than the federal government, let them do it. Let the states and the counties and cities be the base of power, and let excellent centers for practicing certain things take place all across the country, so states are competing with one another in terms of economics and so forth. So anything the federal government does that takes away the power of the states to compete with one another, such as protectionist shipping laws that are on Hawaii and the other non-contiguous states, works against this idea of competitive federalism or limited accountable government. So we believe in a better economy, a better government. And in terms of society, the number one issue for us in society is the education of the younger generation. This is what will make a great country, a great state. And frankly, in Hawaii, we have very limited choice for the public school taxpayer or the public school attendee. And many people are not satisfied with the public school experience, so they will pay out of their own money without any tax credit for their child also to go to private school. And we're not saying we should end the public school system, but we want to promote more diversity within it. We want to promote more educational opportunity.
And there have been some talks about school vouchers recently. How does the Grassroots?
Great, that's a great question. School vouchers could be part of a broader program of options that are given. And one of the things we want to do is avoid saying it's all about school vouchers or not school vouchers. That's very important, because that can become very politicized as a party that is for school vouchers and a party that's against. What we like to point out is this. Number one, there are many ways in which school choice can take place. There are at least a dozen different ways, and they include charter schools, public charter schools, which are attended by about 10% of the public school students now, and they have great diversity. There are some that are built around Hawaiian culture, others that are more technologically oriented. In fact, in New York City, they have these beautiful public charter schools called the magnet schools, such as the Bronx School of Science or the Performing Arts School. So that's one thing that exists.
So these kind of funnel students into a certain path at a young age.
That's
So
right.
they can focus on science or theater as their personality dictates.
It does two things. One, it attracts students around their own talents and gifts. It's a
From what age? This starts in kindergarten?
I'm not sure what age these schools start. I think they're a little older than that. And then, on the other hand, the other value is they make schools competitive. So if a school can be a great science school, students will flock to it, money will flock to it, and so forth. We also have online education taking place in the Department of Education. The Myron B. Thompson School has thousands of students that are being educated online, and on and on. So
Is that based in Oahu or
yes,
across
that's
the
based
state?
on Oahu, and their
open to
clientele
anyone?
extends throughout the state, and I think it's even beyond the state.
At any
some of their
grade level?
clientele. Yes, they have elementary school, middle school, and high school.
Wow.
And so what we're trying to do is point out that vouchers, along with many other forms of school choice, are there, and that the system already has the capacity for it, and we just need to nudge it along. We need to nudge it along. In fact, there's a demand for it when you take a look at the long lists of requests for district exemption. Parents are saying, we want to send our kid to that school. And we think we could have a solution that still takes care of children in poor areas where there is a less of a resource base for their education. One of the interesting things about vouchers, and we like to point this out, is that even in Governor Abercrombie's recent plan for the lowest level of education, pre-kindergarten, vouchers, so parents could choose, was part of his plan. And what we like to point out is, therefore, that idea is not partisan. And so being able to make good ideas safe is part of the work of Grassroots Institute. Being able to help people understand that it's not a Republican issue, a Democrat issue, but it's about these fundamental values. That's what we like to do.
When we're talking about an issue that can benefit everyone in the education system, I spent many 13 years at Punahou, which is a little bit of a bubble, you know, it's kind of insular in there. And I know I
A great American leader went to Punahou.
Fair enough. Well, I think it would have benefited myself and all my classmates there to have students from across the state and across the different communities in our classrooms with us. And I know during the summers sometimes I'd volunteer at, you know, teaching preschool or volunteer at, you know, parks or whatever I did during the summers, and I would meet students from across the island, and I'd think, wow, you know, I wish that I could have this discourse throughout the school year, but you know, you go back to school and it's the same 150, 200 kids you're interacting with all the time, and they're kind of sheltered too. So I think that would really benefit everyone, not just the kids who are stuck in poor schools, but you know, at the whole community, that dialogue and discourse that.
And I think you're right, and you're talking about something that can emerge when we allow the creativity of local communities to play a greater role in the governance. And this is where our philosophy at the Grassroots Institute comes in. And once again, a more limited and accountable government is a better thing for the people, because it proceeds from the idea that people know what is best for themselves and need to be responsible for that. So while we may not be able to move there quickly, a model that is very interesting to us for educational reform is returning power back to school districts or back to counties and so forth, as opposed to all the power concentrated in a single system, in a single board. And there are many politicians who have looked at possibilities, both Democrats and Republicans, to bring that about. The question is, how do we move in that direction? How can we make that idea a safe idea to move toward? And we feel diversity within the school, some of the options we mentioned, from ranging from magnet schools to charter schools to online education, can help bring that kind of closer to the people governance of our schools. Really, fundamentally, parents who live in homes around a school district are the ones who should be most involved in determining what goes on in that school district, because they have the most vested in it. And when the decisions are removed from them, two things happen. They get made at a distance without reference to their values, and number two, people around the schools stop playing the role of being responsible.
Yeah, and each community has its own problems and its own set of values, and you've got to respect that and work with that and not impose something from the top down, some big structure you just expect everyone to comply with.
That's right.
How do you feel about homeschools? I know when I was working at the legislature this last session, one day, or actually it was a week-long program, there were about 100 homeschool students who came in and asked questions of the legislators, and had workshops, and they'd sit there in the offices and in the floor sessions and talk about the legislation among themselves. And I was just blown away by how engaged these homeschool students were. They were far and away more engaged than any of my classmates, maybe myself at Punahou.
What a great option. Homeschooling is an excellent option for some parents and some students, although it may not be for everyone. But you see, democracy is about letting the people rule. And so right now we're structured in our tax situation so that a typical parent here in Hawaii pays state taxes and federal taxes, and none of that money goes to help him or her should they say, we want to homeschool our child.
Yeah.
And that's not an equitable situation. It doesn't encourage power to be at the people level. It discourages it. Many people, just for that reason, don't homeschool their kids, or have to take on inordinate financial duties, a second, a third job, and so forth. And so what we're not trying to say homeschooling is for everybody. What we're trying to say is that allowing parents the power to make that decision and use some of their tax dollars for that purpose is a just, equitable situation, and ultimately produces a better education.
People do know what they want often, and let's return to that after this break. I'm Elise Anderson, volunteering today for the Grassroots Institute of Hawaii, here with Dr. Keli'i Akina. You're listening to Ehana Kakou. We'll be right back after this break. Thank you.
Aloha, I'm Nicole Horry for ThinkTech. For nearly half a century, the Hawaii Foreign Trade Zone No. 9 has brought the benefits of the Foreign Trade Zone program to Hawaii businesses and entrepreneurs. DBET, the Department of Business, Economic Development and Tourism, operates Hawaii's Foreign Trade Zone program to encourage international business and economic development. The Foreign Trade Zone's mission is to increase the amount of international trading activity in Hawaii, thereby providing employment opportunities for the residents of our island state. For more information, see ftz9.org. I'm Nicole Horry. Mahalo.
Aloha, I'm Maria Kashem of ThinkTech Hawaii, and I want to tell you about our ThinkTech talk shows. If you didn't know it, ThinkTech streams video and audio for all of its shows live on the internet from 2 to 5 p.m. every weekday afternoon, and we replay them all night long on ustream.tv. Visit thinktechhawaii.com for our live stream and YouTube links. Raise your awareness on ThinkTech. I'm Maria Kashem, and I'll see you there.
Welcome back to Ehana Kakou, a weekly program with the ThinkTech Hawaii Broadcast Network. I'm Elise Anderson, volunteering today for the Grassroots Institute of Hawaii, here with Dr. Keli'i Akina, President and CEO of the Grassroots Institute of Hawaii. We were talking about bringing the power back to the people.
Yes.
And allowing more choice in education options and
Absolutely. And you know, that's one of our fundamental philosophies that is a universal philosophy. People want to be able to run their lives.
And they want to know that.
And they want to do what's good for their children. These are not political issues. The question then is, how can we structure a government and a society that allows people to have that responsibility, to exercise it, and have the power? The more you take that power away from the people and make decisions in a central, governized way, the less power that they have.
And people become less and less engaged and show up less often to vote. We began as a state apparently with the highest voter turnout in the nation, and now we're at the lowest voter turnout in the nation.
You're right, absolutely. And what was going on back at statehood in 1959? What took place? Hawaii's people were taking their future in their hands. Mm-hmm. They knew that they had to have the vote also as individuals to say, we endorse becoming a full state of the United States, and there was great enthusiasm and so forth.
They saw the vote as a right, not something, just a chore that they had to go to.
That's
and
right.
that they wanted to shirk out
They
of.
saw the possibility that if they exercised their vote and showed their solidarity with this idea of statehood, that they could change the future. What a vision, what power.
Yeah.
Now, fast forward ahead to 2012, 2013, we have the lowest voter turnout in the nation. We went from the highest to the lowest, and we have to ask, why is that? Jay Fidel, and I want to say to the camera here, all of you out there watching, ThinkTech Hawaii does a great job, and Jay Fidel is our producer of this program. You heard from him a little earlier, and we're grateful to the entire team and all of the broadcast people who are working with us. So those of you watching from outside of Hawaii, come to Hawaii to help us build our economy. And we'll go to your homeland and help you build your economy. But in any case, I think that what we have to understand is that power is really the measure of how well a government is doing. When power is flowing up from the people to the government, we're working against the principles of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. But when power goes back from the government to the people and is in the hands of the people, people ultimately take responsibility and create a better society. They have a better economy, they compete in business, they have better schools, and we can rely on enlightened self-interest. Mm-hmm. Because it doesn't help us to have negative activity if we're the ones responsible for it.
Yeah. There's been a little bit of talk recently surrounding this gay marriage issue. Yes. About whether the people are equipped to make those decisions or not. Does the majority have the willpower and the altruism to protect the interests of the minority? Do you think that we're safe leaving things to the people?
Well, I think it is a pernicious, evil thing for any group of people in power to say that the ordinary man, the ordinary woman, is not qualified to decide. Our country is based upon
That sounds
the
like
fact-
something pre-Civil
Yes.
War.
That's right. All men, by which they meant men and women, are created equal. And we also have a constitution that says that the rights not delegated to the federal government are reserved for the states. There's always this concept that the individual and government at the lowest level, closest to home, is the best government for the people. And the notion that people can't decide for themselves is ruining several populations. I'm part Hawaiian, and I love my people of Hawaiian blood, but I also love people of Hawaiian heart, that is a much broader community. And the approach that breaks my heart of social service welfare systems, of providing leasehold land that you could never ultimately own and trade on the open market, but taking care of people, that breaks my heart because it creates a cycle of dependency. A cycle in which you stand in line for years waiting to receive a leasehold portion that you'll lose ultimately if the blood quantum of your children falls below a certain amount, and that you could never trade on the open market. And then to keep yourself sustained, receiving grants and social services from the state as well as from the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. This only creates cycles of dependency. But to me, some of the most liberated, empowered members of the Hawaiian race, whom I know, have gone out onto the open market, have taken responsibility for their lives. Senator Akaka is one of those. Senator Akaka has a wonderful story all should understand. He basically was raised in a family of values, fundamental American and Christian values in his case. He did well in school. He served his country. He used the GI Bill and got an education. He became a teacher. He was a community servant. He went into politics. He became one of the most distinguished Americans. And he did this giving his family wealth as well, homes and a livelihood. And he did it all without welfare, all without homestead land, all without OHA handouts, all without what we call the Akaka Bill that would create a privileged class that would receive tribal benefits.
But yet he introduced the Akaka
Yes.
Bill.
And so I was talking to him once and commended him, and I genuinely do, for his example, and told him I believe everyone should follow your example. But on the other hand, I don't think that we should be promoting systems that keep people dependent. One of the problems with the promotion of a Native Hawaiian race-based state-sponsored nation is that it is one way of trying to empower Hawaiians, but it has huge, huge side effects. Whenever we establish something that's race-based or the state sponsors it, we're going against some fundamental principles. And this is what Grassroots takes a solid stand on, is the problem with the Native Hawaiian Role Commission Act, which is set up to identify people by race and to include them in a privileged situation and to be administered by government officials. Now, the problem here is that this doesn't ultimately help Hawaiian people. And one of the things...
It empowers a system. It doesn't
that's
empower
right.
the Hawaiian people.
That's right.
It empowers the people at the top of that system.
That's right. And we have seen in the experiment of the American Native Indian reservations, much neglect on the reservations of the people and their needs, much dependency upon a system, but wealth being amassed by a small layer of tribal leaders. And at Grassroots Institute, we fiercely want to defend the Hawaiian people and all people from any layer of tribal leadership over them. And I think that's very important, because empowerment comes from the principle that we can take control of our lives, we can compete on the free open market, and we can, within the structure of the benefits and the rights we have as Americans, really accomplish great things like Senator Akaka.
Do you think that the Hawaiian people anticipate what would happen if there was a separate government for them, that they would have this problem with the leadership usurping what they think will be their power? Or do you think
well, it's hard to
know what
say.
they're in
I
for?
wouldn't put myself in a position to know what any people really thinks and says, but I can use some objective measures that after a year and several $1 million of an enrollment campaign supervised by the Office of Hawaiian Affairs called the Native Hawaiian Role, based upon an act in this legislature in 2011, one would ask how many people have signed up for it. You know, as of
How many have?
well, as of 12 months after it, less than 15,000 had signed up for it.
Out of what's the
Their
population
goal
of
was-
Native Hawaiians who would have qualified?
That's a good question. Their goal was to get as close to about 520,000 worldwide who are part Hawaiian, maybe 250,000 to be on the roll.
By when? Did they have a
by
deadline?
1 year.
Oh, and
And
they got
so-
15 instead
Yes,
of 500.
15 to 20,000 by the end of that year.
Wow.
And so one has to ask the questions as to why. I mean, it could be for many reasons, and I don't know completely why, but I can tell you this, that the program is moving forward, creating a community that has access to the land, the power, and some form of government autonomy, not so much for the benefit of large numbers of members, but for the benefit of those who are in a position of power. And many, many Hawaiians are starting to see this. Very few people understand what it takes to sign up for this Native Hawaiian role. Understand the irony of this. The Office of Hawaiian Affairs, which administers it, is governed by state elected officials, all of whom, when they ran for office, affirmed the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the state of Hawaii. They're administering a process that requires people to take an oath in writing. And that oath is this in writing: I affirm the unrelinquished sovereignty of the Hawaiian people. That's quote unquote. Now, I don't know if that's...
How do you reconcile that? How do you affirm the U.S. Constitution and that in
well,
the same
frankly,
breath?
I think of the action that takes place when people are naturalized and go through the naturalization ceremony, a swearing in front of a judge, in which they renounce sovereignty of any entity other than the United States. So I think there's some very real problems with this language. And I have talked to many constitutional attorneys, and they feel that this is at odds with our Constitution. And it's something that I think that as the next OHA elections come around, I hope that there will be good candidates and people who will take the organization to task for this and help to bring it into alignment with constitutional law. I think that's very important. Now, what it goes back to is this: there has to be a watchdog for the people. And since I've come on board with the Grassroots Institute, many Hawaiian people, part Hawaiian by blood, in addition to the many already there who are Hawaiian at heart, have come on board to realize that this state-based, state-sponsored, race-based nation idea is not healthy. It's not healthy in two senses. One, it's not the empowerment Hawaiians need. And number two, it's not good for our society. We're going a direction that is exactly opposite of the way developed nations are going and have gone in the last 200 years of creating social harmony. And I think people are starting to feel the tension.
So you say that they started becoming vocal when you became the president of Grassroots Institute?
Well, we've had a growing constituency. Many people becoming exposed to what Grassroots is all about, our values and our beliefs, and we've had many people who understood from communities I have been involved in who've come on board, and many of them are part Hawaiians, and that's very, very exciting because we understand as part Hawaiians and as Hawaiians by blood that the most fundamental value is the aloha spirit, and it's part of the law of our land. And the aloha spirit is inclusive. We are great because we can be inclusive of all people. And that's a true Hawaiian value. To me, that value is denied by creating a separate state-sponsored race-based nation.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Do you think that there's possibility for communication, just value-wise? It was thrown out there several days ago by someone I was listening to that that you cannot be a Hawaiian and an American at the same time, that the zeitgeists of the two cultures just don't mesh. Do you believe that's true?
Well, that's just not historically accurate.
I didn't think so. It struck
the
me as
Hawaiians
odd.
have always been able to preserve their culture on one hand, and yet participate in political structures on the other hand. And there were multiple political structures prior to Kamehameha the First, and then from Kamehameha the First on, and the development of a constitutional monarchy with a constitution in 1840 in the Hawaiian Kingdom that was remarkably similar to the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of the United States.
Yeah.
And so this idea that the principles and values of American democracy, Republican democracy, are at odds with Hawaiian culture is not borne out by history.
Yeah. Thank you, Keli'i. We'll be right back after this break. I'm Elise Anderson, volunteering for the Grassroots Institute of Hawaii, here with Dr. Keli'i Akina, President and CEO of the Grassroots Institute. We're on ThinkTech Hawaii's broadcast station, and we'll resume after the break.
Aloha, my name is Dan Bauer and I'm the General Manager of the Plaza Club. The Plaza Club is Honolulu's premier business club. We're located in the heart of the financial district on historic Fort Street Mall. On the 20th and 21st floors atop the Pioneer Plaza, our commanding skyline views, along with our award-winning cuisine and service, are known as the place to do business downtown. We offer professional as well as social events and programs to our members and their guests, all tailored to enrich their professional and personal lives and to give them the cutting edge that they deserve in business. Why don't you consider becoming a member of the club? Call me at 531-7788 or come see me and let's talk business and how the Plaza Club can work for you. Again, my name is Dan Bauer. I'm the General Manager of the club and I'm here for you.
Welcome back to Ehana Kakou. I'm Elise Anderson, volunteering for Grassroots Institute of Hawaii, here with Dr. Keli'i Akina, President and CEO of Grassroots Institute of Hawaii. We're on the ThinkTech Hawaii Broadcast Network. Dr. Akina, we were just talking about the possibilities of integration between Hawaii and the United States and the people of both entities. Can you tell me a little bit about the Jones Act and how we might make trade more possible and more where it's at the initiative of both parties?
Well, Hawaii was once the shipping hub of the Pacific. And when we take a look at Hawaii compared to other regions, we've now shrunk in our shipping industry. Take a look at Singapore. Singapore has less landmass than Oahu, and in 1940 a smaller population and had a smaller shipping industry. But free trade was allowed at Singapore, and any ships could come from across the world, regardless of where they were built. Today, Singapore has 260 shipping lines connecting them to 1,000 ports across the world with some of the cheapest export prices anywhere. That's a huge part of their industry.
Wow.
Hawaii has shrunk to 2 lines that control 100% of the shipping. And we have at most maybe 3 ships in harbor. Singapore has 81.
Wow.
Now what's happened in the
And what's the
process,
population difference between Hawaii and Singapore?
Singapore has now overtaken Hawaii. Hawaii was once about almost twice the size of Singapore. Now Singapore is about 50% larger than Hawaii.
Okay.
Now, there are many causes that are associated with this, so I'm not going to say that our federal law called the Jones Act caused all of this, but the Jones Act created a situation that protects the American shipbuilding industry.
When was the Jones Act
1920.
enacted?
And it basically is a law that said that any transport of cargo between American ports, must be done on ships built in the United States, manned mostly by United States crew, flying a United States flag, and owned in the United States. Now, what has that done? That has basically shrunk the shipbuilding industry in the U.S. to a place where now we make about 0.5% of the tonnage of ships that carry cargo across the world. It also makes a huge disincentive, because once a foreign ship comes to Hawaii, it can't go to another port. It's therefore foreign ships bypass Hawaii because we're not big enough.
We're not profitable.
As a result, a Bloomberg journal online at the beginning of this year said that they have estimates that this act raises Hawaii's prices by at least 30%. That's incredible. Now, Grassroots Institute doesn't just take that figure. We're actually working with a group to conduct real research to figure this out.
And we were just talking about the GE tax and
That's
how
right.
those costs are going to be pushed onto the people who can least afford them.
And so to make this long story short, Grassroots Institute has been working on strategies to bring some change to the Jones Act. The problem is, up until now, those who have wanted to change it haven't worked together. There have been some who want a total repeal of the act, some who want some litigation against the act, some who want to just modify part of it. We've brought all of these parties, the key leaders of them, together to work together, and that's part of what we're all about, working together to find solutions.
And as soon as you leverage those voices, people are involved, people are interested, and the system's not fighting itself from within.
So we have Democrats and Republicans, we have people who believe in different solutions, all working together at least to shift the tide. And that represents what we're about, Ehana Kakou, uniting Hawaii's people for a better economy, government, and society. You've done a great job today.
Thank you, Dr. Akina. You are on Ehana Kakou, and I'm Elise Anderson, volunteering today for the Grassroots Institute of Hawaii, here with Dr. Keli'i Akina, President and CEO of Grassroots Hawaii. We are on ThinkTech Hawaii, and we've enjoyed learning today about politics, economics, and society, and how we can improve those for future generations in these beautiful islands. Lucky we live Hawaii. Ehana Kakou, we shall work together.
You say that very well. Aloha, everybody.
Aloha.
Good job.